And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and this is our New Year's Day program of Tell Me Your Story into our 15th year. And we are going to have with us here on the program a woman who's been with us many times. I've spent some time with her working on a song that I will play at the end of this program. I'm actually putting that together as far as the video, but you'll be able to hear it, and I'll have some kind of visual for the YouTube viewers as well. Emily Yurchesen is my special guest, my co-host today for this letting go of the old year and bringing in the new year. Emily, it is really a pleasure to have you with us here on this program to kind of have a conversation about not only saying goodbye to 2022, but saying hello to 2023, and also talking about the work that you've been doing this past year and some of the things people can look forward to in terms of the elements that you work with to help people in the, shall we say, the transitory parts of their lives that more and more people, I think, are getting in touch with to begin living their life's purpose.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Richard. I am so grateful. Thank you for that introduction. I just love that. I love how you describe that. And my spirit just gets so excited to be a part of it because I love that place of meeting people because they're so open and they're so vulnerable and they're so ready for change, which is what we're talking about today, right? The shifts we want to make as we move into this next new year of 2023.
Absolutely. Now, I know a lot of people, they tend to focus a lot on numbers and patterns and this and that. I mean, I'm a big fan of numbers and patterns and so forth. 2022, if you break it down, is actually a 6. 2023, obviously, naturally would be a 7, and some people will, make something of that and others won't. They're like, what's the big deal? But I know a lot of people have really felt like, in spite of the fact that we've been going through these processes of late for the last, we'll say now almost 3 years, that 2022 has probably been, of those 3 years, has been for them the most challenging, the most difficult, if you will. And I will have to say that one of the more disheartening examples of that is what's happening at what they call the happiest place on earth, the various Disney parks, and people are getting into fights. I never heard of that before at Disneyland. Oh my, what's going wrong in the universe? Are we on a tilt? Is that what the deal is? It's kind of sad, but at the same time, when you look at it, we've been through some very challenging times in the last 3.5, 4 years, and maybe even going back a little bit further than that.
Yes.
People are looking for, quote unquote, getting back to normal. Some people talk about the new normal. I like to put it in the context when talking about this, about a book that I was asked to read by one of my employers called Who Moved the Cheese? One of our listeners actually sent me a poster, a giant wall poster, said, put it up in the restroom.
Yes, I read that book in my 20s before I took my grand adventure and my whole life shifted. My whole vibration was ready for a new journey. And I remember my coworker who I was teaching with at a school in Portland, she gave me that book and I'll never forget reading it. So,
well, and ladies and gentlemen, I have to do this because it just so happens, well, you know what? I'm not sure that I did bring it with me. Maybe. Hang on. I'm gonna slide over here, and I'm gonna check real quick. I'm hoping that I did bring it. I'm hoping it is the poster that's in here, because if it's not, then I will have wasted time. But that's okay. And it appears that I did not. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. We'll just move this back over here and get back to work here. But I have this giant wall poster, and I thought it was so funny that they'd send it to me. And I remember after reading the book and giving it back to my boss, I said, look, I don't have a problem with people moving the cheese. That's fine. You want to move it anywhere you want. Just tell me where you moved it so I know where to look for it. And maybe that's asking too much.
I was actually
Did I miss the lesson in the book? Did I miss it?
I was actually thinking that maybe the book now is I am the cheese.
Ah.
Instead of where is the cheese? Because if we're asking that question, where is the cheese is right here where we are, right?
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
It is one of those aspects of change.
Yes.
A line from a John Denver song is, changes somehow frighten me. Still, I have to smile. It turns me on to think of growing old. And when I was in my teens, it did. I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be so great to be an adult and get to do the stuff that my folks are doing and this and that and the other. And then I got there and I'm going, not quite what I was expecting, but I'm still enthused.
But the beauty of that, and I just got finished with a gig with older folks because that's something that I do. And I look at them and I go, yeah, there is that process of growing older. But one of the things, I was reading a book recently called Aging Joyfully. And it's a beautiful book. I can't remember the author at this time, but I will get it to you so the listeners can have it. Beautiful book. But it is about discovering our radiance. And that is the shift. That is my intention as I move on into this new year for myself and also for everybody that I meet, no matter what your age, because age is just a number. And so is the turning of the new year, but it's our radiance. And actually, when we go through those challenging times, those dark nights of the soul, as Carl Jung talks about, and I talk about in my book, right, The Odyssey of Song, that it actually shifts, it creates opening so that our radiance, our true radiance, the divine light of who we are can shine through. And I don't think that happens if we don't go through those challenging times.
You know, and I've thought about that. It was always someone who said to me that we need the challenges. They would use other words, and I like to try to keep it more optimistic. Yeah. We need those challenges in order to build character. I'm thinking there's got to be an easier way. But I'm beginning to learn there really isn't.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. And actually, when I talk about that radiance, the radiance is we step more fully into the divine nature of who we are when we are challenged, because it pushes us to go, why is this happening to me? But the why is the, who moved the cheese kind of thing, in the sense that the why isn't the more interesting question. And in fact, maybe it's, and I also talk about this in the Odyssey of Song, is it's the journey, of course, as we've heard many times, but the beautiful questions. Krista Tippett, who is a wonderful interviewer, talks about beautiful questions. So those beautiful questions that we can ask of our lives, instead of getting furious, getting curious, getting curious as to why it is I think my life should be like this.
Yeah.
Getting curious as to why am I holding back from the dreams that I've had, that I've always wanted to pursue? What is, and why did these things have to fall apart in order for these things to come together? Like you said, it's more of a positive space in terms of curiosity is, wow, there's an awe and a wonder of the mystery of who we are and the mystery of life itself.
Yeah. Emily Yurchesen is my guest. She does have a book. She just mentioned an Odyssey of Song, which I have participated in the program my goodness, a year and a half ago.
Crazy.
I have a song that we'll play at the end of the program. And you also have a website. What is that website? EmilySongbird.com. But funny thing about my website is it's been static for a year. So you'll see me on the front of the website and I'm holding my book and I'm smiling, but nothing else has happened. But you could still reach me at that website. That's right. There you go. There you go. Emily Yurchesen and EmilySongbird.com as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we are here with a very fun, loving woman who has joined us on this program a few times and has actually been the host of this program, interviewing me, which was kind of fun. But today we're talking about the old year and the new year. I was in a program for the holidays that I started back in August, and I auditioned for it. Not really, I mean, I figured, they'll probably let me in, but it's okay if they don't. But they let me in. Then asked me if I would be willing to do some acting. I said, well, I've never really done that, but sure, I'm willing to take a shot. So I had a whole 2 lines, 5 words, and it was a blast. But one of the things that they talked about, and it had to do with the Scottish solstice celebration. And some of the dialogue that they had to do with the old year and how the old year, as they spoke of it, it's all worn out. We've used it up. It's time to let it rest in peace and bring, and so to speak, birth the new year. And I thought that's really interesting. And then they had a couple of examples in Acts 1 and Act 2 that talked about how we need death. In the story they were telling, this little girl, she finds this giant walnut and it's empty. But then she sees death coming towards her, and she knows this phrase to say to make him disappear. And he does, and she puts him inside, makes him real tiny. She puts him in the walnut, slams it shut, throws it back in the ocean. So now there's no death. And she goes back home, and Mom says, why don't you go out and kill a chicken? Because everything I've tried to fix here, I can't do anything with it. So she goes out, can't kill the chicken. Goes to the butcher. The butcher is, she's there to get some chops. I can't. I've tried to kill the chop, the boar, and every time I cut him up, he comes back to life, and nothing. It seems like nothing will die. So finally, the mother says, we need death to live. We need death in order to live.
Yes.
And that's a hard one for folks to take. But this year of 2022, as we go into 2023, started out for me. I lost a dear friend of mine who was 94. He lived across the street from my wife and I back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and he and I would work together. He was the percussionist for the Utah Symphony Orchestra under a rather auspicious conductor by the name of Maurice Abravanel. And we would transfer reel to reel to computer and so forth. And he passed away in January. Then a dear friend of ours at the radio station in February passed away. And then my wife's remaining sibling passed away in early March. And then my eldest sister passed away in late March. I can't think of anybody else that's passed away since then that I've known, but that's I think that's plenty for the year. Thank you very much. But it's one of those experiences that we're all going to go through. I mean, even my boss had a few years back where it was like every time he turned around, one of his friends was passing away.
Yes. And we go through that at a physical level. Loss is, I remember reading Joseph Campbell, one of my main gurus, and he said, life feeds from life and death. And it's a cycle, but it is, we're always in the creative process. We're always going through the grieving process, and we're always going through the rebirthing process. Now, sometimes we feel it more deeply than others, but that is life, and every day that we go to sleep, every night we are reborn, every morning. So, but I think that developing practices where you are learning to let go is really important. I think about that now. I didn't have as many actual physical deaths around me personally that I knew about, but I went through a big breakup in a relationship, and that was a huge death for me, and it brought about all sorts of transformation and shifts, and it brought me down very deep into those dark spaces of loss. And I think whether it's a breakup, whether it's a loss of physical human life, that showing up for life, and showing up in a way where we aren't holding on so tightly, but that we have that gratitude and we have that acknowledgement and appreciation of everybody in our life, and we whatever's holding us back, that we tell them how much we appreciate. And I think about that with my folks who I spent the holidays, and I adore them so much, and I can't even fathom. At a certain point, I couldn't fathom the loss of my folks, and now as they get older and older, I practice it. I practice the letting go of that, because I think we have to practice that.
Yeah. I thought about a dear friend who passed a couple of years back. She was, I guess I'll call her my acting coach. She was a mentor, as I like to call her. She didn't like that term. She preferred to just be friends, and I understood that. So I respected that. But she passed away, and then when my sister passed away this past March, and then when I went through this program, this show that we put on through the Santa Barbara Revels, I wanted to call her and share that with her. And I go, I can't call her.
Yes.
But I know that from spirit, she is aware. Yes. And I put the gender on because I don't believe that there is any gender in spirit.
Yes.
We're just,
yes.
We're not androgynous. There is no.
Yeah.
We're energy in a manner of speaking. We're just energy. So.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and actually, when you were saying that, I just remembered my mom just texted me before this interview. My grandfather's birthday is today. He would have been 111 years old.
Oh, wow.
So he's no longer on this planet.
Yeah.
But like you said, and this is great how music works, because that's my work is with music, and you were exposed and now have opened up through that performance and holidays, and you're singing and you're acting and you're bringing that musical part of you out. And so I think that music is a way that we get communicated to all the time. Songs that come, like you said, the John Denver, the songs that come with messages, that those are those people from beyond sending us a vibrational symbol.
And because you mentioned him, and of course he died in 97 in a plane crash, which was very sad. But at the same time, I was grateful to have, number one, I actually did go to one of his concerts in Phoenix. I think it was at the Arizona State University Activity Center with a woman that I was seeing at the time. I was 21. She was 32. So I've always had an affinity for older women. Not sure why, but anyway.
Okay.
So I got a chance to see him. But I have lately been watching all kinds of videos of him and about him. And what I am most appreciative of is the fact that these videos cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of this man. Now, he wrote his own autobiography, which I've read, and he talks about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And one of the interviewers actually asked him the question that actually I kind of posed, and this kind of applies to all of us. There's an area in our lives that we put forth of, let's say, our life's purpose of service and so forth and so on. And that we want to be maybe remembered for, that part of us. Mm-hmm. But then there's the other part of our lives that's a little incongruent to that persona that we put out there. And sometimes it's not intentional. It's just what happens.
Yes.
And John was that way.
Yes.
He had a drinking problem. He had drug problems. He wasn't even supposed to be flying because he did not have the medical documentation to allow him to fly, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
He was just a man, just like the rest of us.
Yes.
And I would even apply the title of my song to him.
Yes.
He was just a good man doing the best that he could.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
And that's what we're all trying to do, is just the best that we can with what we have.
Absolutely.
Now, you had mentioned in terms of earlier, this aspect of the challenges that we go through. Mm-hmm. And that I think there's a part of it where we need to come to a space or a place where we can say, you know what? Yeah, this is hard. This is a challenge. This is difficult. I'm finding, I'm getting really weary, et cetera, et cetera. But it's okay. Yeah. It's just, because this is just the way that it is.
Yeah.
It's neither good nor bad.
Right.
It's just the way that it is. And to me, it's life lessons. Okay. We're learning
Yes.
experiences.
Yes.
They're not good or bad. They're just learning experiences.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I'm working on getting rid of the words failure and success from my vocabulary because, I love the example that I've used many times of Edison and his light bulb. And someone asked him, how many times did you fail? He says, I never failed. I just found 990 ways that it didn't work.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes 990 ways to get it to work.
I love that. I love that. And I think that whole idea of experimenting, and there's a great quote, life is all an experiment. And I'm trying to think who it was who wrote that. But we are here to explore and to experiment. And one of the things when you were talking about your song and you were talking about that, we're doing the best that we can, which I do really think that that is the case, is that I was reading a book the other day by Tara Brach. Have you ever heard of Tara Brach? She's a wonderful meditation teacher and self-compassion teacher. And I was just reading a book about discovering the gold or uncovering the gold, something like that. But she talked about this wonderful Buddha statue that has, it had cracks in the statue, and underneath they discovered that it was all gold. The whole Buddha statue was in gold, but it was covered, and until the cracks were there to show the gold, that you think so. A lot of times, and she likened this, and I've felt this all my life, is the narrative story that I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to be this. I'm not good enough to be this. And so she suggested that to err, and it's not even error, but that we have an essential goodness. And I think that that's what your song, what you got to was that we have an essential goodness and everybody else does. At their essence, at their core, we are love. I mean, that's my version of God is love. And we are that. We are made of that. And so the other thing that she suggested, which I loved, was that whatever comes up for us, and this is why the Odyssey, and this is why music is such a great vehicle to move through this, is whatever comes up for us, be able to accept that, like you were saying, I'm feeling frustrated right now. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling afraid. Well, accept it. It's part of who you are. The minute that we try to push something away, and I think this also ties back to what you were saying about how we have certain personas or certain masks that we show the world, right? And we get sometimes attached to the roles. I'm a producer, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a whatever. But really, those are just roles that we're playing. The gold is the essence of who we are, and it can express itself in many ways. It can be a singer at times. It can be an actor. It can be a teacher. It can be a son, a father, a mother, all of those roles, because like you said, the essence, the divine essence of who we are is beyond gender. It's beyond all those roles. So if we recognize, just like you did on the stage, that we're just playing out these characters, which is what the Odyssey is all about. Well, how is this character? How's the perfectionist for you? How is the critic? How is the, that we can recognize and integrate all of that and go, hey, guess what? I'm energy and I'm love and I'm having a good time on this adventure and I'm exploring, experimenting and having a good time.
I think that that's the key right there is enjoying the adventure, enjoying the journey, rather than getting caught up in the details. It kind of brings to mind the example that I have in my book, Choices, of matching your words to your choice, what the things that you say. And when my first wife and I were presented with an opportunity to buy a house, and we went to see it, and we said, yeah, okay, let's give it a shot. What do I got to lose? We made the decision that we were going to do one thing and one thing only, okay? And we would repeat this anytime something else would come up to distract us from that one thing. And that one thing was We are buying a house. We are buying a house.
Yeah.
So if the appraisers said this or that or the other, no, we're buying a house. We'll take care of the details, but we're buying a house. We're not fighting with the mortgage company. We're not fighting with the appraiser. We're not fighting with the insurance company. We're not dealing with all. Yes, we'll deal with the details, but what is our goal? We are buying a house, and we closed in 30 days. From the day we saw it, we closed in 30 days.
Fantastic.
In spite of the fact that on the day of closing, I had no homeowner's insurance. Okay?
It was an adventure.
It was right to the very end. And I have to say, I can't remember ever signing my name so many times back in 1993.
Well, you know what that reminds me of, and this is what, as I'm working on my second book, that the committing to your dream, committing to what it is. Now, commitment is not just saying it, right? It's the everyday actions behind that align you with that. So you can say, for me, oh, I've always wanted to be a musician. Well, I can say that until the cows come in, but if I don't sit and practice my piano, or if I don't get out and I practice, writing, if I want to be a songwriter, I ain't gonna get to that place.
Yeah.
So the commitment and saying what you want is one thing, and then the everyday choices. I love that because I can hear even when you're saying that you were this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And then all the other things were part of the adventure. And actually that's what the Odyssey of Song is about. Like in the beginning, I wanted to be a performer and a songwriter and all this kind of stuff. Well, has that happened? Yes. But is it different of how I imagine it to be? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but when you show up with that excitement and enthusiasm and commitment to what it is you want to create, it's amazing how the elements of the universe align to support you in that.
Reminds me of a line from Jack Benny, who, for some who don't know who that is a comedian and a violinist. And he every so often on his show, he would play his violin. And he was awful. He was absolutely horrible, okay? And he knew it. But one of the things he said in one of his interviews, it might have been on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, was, you have to practice even to be bad. And his intention was to be bad, okay? For the sake of the laughter, for the fun of it. All right. And I thought, wow, okay, I can live with that.
Well, yeah. And I think, I think of my own talent and developing myself along the way. And I started and I was so horrible. And I have improved greatly. But, it's something that I'm always surprised when people appreciate when I leave a gig and they're like, thank you so much. And I'm like, are you sure? And there's sometimes I hit it and I'm like, I really nail something. I sing that song really well. I play really well. And there are other times where it just is not how I thought. But one of the guys today, he's so sweet. Skip is his name. And he's in his wheelchair. And he always catches me at the end and he says, you bring so much joy and I could see the sparkle in his eyes and the twinkle in his eyes. And I think that's the thing is sometimes we think we're there for a certain reason, but we're actually called for an entirely different reason. And I remember that when I was first started teaching at the music store that I was, and incidentally, it was called Divine Appointment Guitars, and my guitar was called Divinity, and I had it painted on the front of the case in nail polish, and I walked in the store, and I'm like, I'm gonna work in this store, and it was divinely appointed. But I remember the woman there who hired me, and it was on the job training, and I would come into her room and I would be filled with tears and I would say, I don't know why people are coming to me. I don't know much more than they do. and she looked at me and I'll never forget this. And she said, Emily, when you go into the room with anybody, you create magic. And that's what I tell people. That's what I tell people today. I say, you come with me for an hour and we're going to create magic. And so, whether the singing is good, the playing is good, there's something underneath all of that. And I think when we let those cracks of ourselves open up, the true radiance of who we are really shines through.
Emily Yurchesen is my guest. EmilySongbird.com is her website, and we certainly hope that you will go there. Her book, her present book, she's working on another one. We'll find out a little more about that. We'll find out a little bit more about that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Odyssey of Song is the title of Emily's work that I have worked with her on, or I should say, she took me through those 12 steps. Which is, I even made the connection, this reminiscent of the 12-step programs, which is a really, really kind of cool, that helped me to write a song. It was not actually my first. I am still looking for the lyrics to that first poem that I turned into a song from one of the personal growth programs that I went through back in Phoenix. I know it'll turn up. It will eventually turn up. I know that I did not throw it away because those things were important to me. The things that I wrote, my journals and so forth. And I've locked it away somewhere safe. And I will search it out in the new year. There's no question. But the aspect of, because I keep thinking about this program, this show that I was in, this onstage program, and I saw it from two different perspectives. One of them was that I wasn't nervous on stage with an audience because I was on stage with a village. Now, the village works real well in the analogy because that's kind of what we were, a bunch of different Scottish clans. I was of the Mackenzie clan, and there was the Cunninghams, and there was the Frasers, and I don't remember them all, but I was up there with friends, family, and so forth. And it was such a cool experience. And a matter of fact, when one woman would get up and sing her solo, well, actually, she would sing her solo, and then another woman joined her, and they did a duet. It was in Gaelic, which is what they speak in Scotland, Gaelic in Ireland, so there's a difference. And I remember when we had that first audience, I had tears because I recognized, wow, I can't believe I'm a part of this. This is awesome. Yeah. This is incredible. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And then the post-performance accolades by the members of the village would say, I've been involved for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it was. This was by far the best. This was the most incredible, loving, supportive, and on all those accolades. And I'm going, wow, I was a part of that. Awesome. And I felt it too. And it is when we put ourselves out there. I mean, this was outside my comfort zone. It really was. There were a couple of times in September and October, even into November, when I'm thinking, I'm going to sit this out. I'm going to say, I can't do this. I'm. And it was when the other members of the cast, as well as I think it was the director, who basically used the phrase, fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of us who did not memorize all of the lyrics to the songs. I mean, they were very challenging songs. But I was up there, and if I didn't know the words, I would mouth. I would try to sort of mimic the other people around me. If I didn't know the words, but I knew the tune, I would find a way so that I would fit. I wouldn't stand out, that kind of thing. I was a part of the collective, the chorus, and so forth. And it opened up some doors that hadn't been opened up for a very long time. Yeah. When you step outside that comfort zone, And that's what you do. You help people to do that, don't you?
I do. I do. And I model that for them because for the longest time I had the worst performance anxiety. I mean, absolutely the worst. I'll never forget. I remember a gig I was doing. When I was in my early 30s, years ago, I was like, I'm going to go out and do these coffee gigs, and I get out there, I'm on stage, I got my keyboard, my guitar, I have everything. I was just horrible. And I will never forget this woman, one of the only women in the stage. She was writing the whole time in calligraphy while I was performing. And then she rolled up this scroll and she put a ribbon around it. And she handed it to me at the end of the performance. And it was so interesting because the scroll had how to balance your right and your left hemisphere of your brain. And so I was not ready to get up on stage. But what happens when we essentially get out of our own way? Because that's why we hold ourselves back from taking risks, any sort of risk. And creative risks are sometimes some of the scariest because we may have been shamed. We may have told, I have so many clients, they told that they would lip sync in the choir when they were younger because they had to lip sync because their voice wasn't good enough to do that. Yeah. So you go your whole life without singing. Can you imagine now going your life without singing? You found your song. You went through that process with me of finding your song. You had done that before, but you went and rebirthed that. And then you recognize the joy of coming together in community in song, which essentially, even if you're on stage by yourself, you are connected. Because this whole notion, like one of the things I do is I turn this whole mythology of what it is to be a musician, because a musician is essentially a muse, is a channel. And so whether you're there with a village on the stage or you're by yourself, you are connected and you don't hold yourself away from expressing, the emotion and the truth and the love, whether it's your song or it's any song that you choose to sing, but you don't hold your true essence back, which I call your song. Yeah.
And we need to, whether we put it to music or not, we need to share that within us. I am reading a book right now called The Emotional Code. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. And it is by a doctor. I'm going to see if I can't snag this here. It is written by a Dr. Bradley Nelson, I believe. Yeah, Dr. Bradley Nelson. It was actually recommended to me. And I'm listening to what they're talking about. And we talked about the challenges that we face and the emotions that are associated with those challenges. And one of the elements is that it doesn't talk about getting rid of. It talks about, as you mentioned earlier, going through. Someone said to me not long ago when we were talking about this, well, yeah, you could turn around and walk the other way. No, you cannot turn around and walk the other way.
You can.
Well,
people
you can.
Try all their lives to walk away from their own.
What's interesting is that we'll always pivot around to be in front of you. It will always pivot around to be in front of you.
Yes.
Before we go any further, just let you folks know, Emily Yurchesen is my guest. EmilySongbird.com is the website, and you are listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we're here with Emily, the Songbird, if you will. She's written a book entitled The Odyssey of Song, which I have participated in that program, and it was definitely worthwhile. I saw a movie not long ago. You may have seen this, called, I believe it was called I Can Only Imagine. And it had to do with a boy who grew up, and his father was just not real supportive. Thought he should play football, but he wanted to pursue music. And apparently this is a true story, having to do with another musician, a singer named Amy Grant, who I fell in love with in the 80s because of the music that we were playing at the Christian station I was working at. My favorite was, of course, of hers album was Age to Age. I used to listen to that all the time. I just loved listening to that woman's, and I was a teenager at the time. She was that woman's voice. Anyway, so he goes through this whole thing. Finally, he writes this song. Now, he writes this song because at one point in the movie, he's going through his journals. And he had left the house for a period of time, leaving his journals there. So he's now going through his journals. And in the margins, all throughout his journals, he's seeing this phrase next to these dreams that he would write about, these aspirations, these desires. I can only imagine. But he didn't write them. And his father had written in the margin, I can only imagine. So he writes this song to and about his father, who was still very much alive. And he gave the song to Amy. This is how she falls into this because, I can't. So she's up on stage getting ready to debut the song, and she's just thinking, no, this isn't my song. This is not my song. You need to come up here. You need to sing this song. And so he does. And it got me to thinking about my dad. And I actually came up with, and I made it a point, number one, to write down what the words that were coming, but I also grabbed my phone quickly and I sang the song so I have the notes. So you and I are going to be working on this somewhere down the road. Okay.
Great.
Oh, Daddy, you know how much I love you. Oh, Daddy, I know how much you care. Oh, Daddy, I would only be half the man I am. Oh, Daddy, if you had not been there. Now, that comes from the fact that my father does not believe to this day that he played a significant role in our development, because he doesn't think he was ever really there, because he was always at work. And then he would come home, my mom would pick him up and bring him home. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? You were there. Yeah. And I called him following seeing that movie. And I said, I said, you told me this, and I just want you to know that you were there. And those very words, and Dad, I would only be half the man I am if you hadn't been there.
Oh, that's so powerful. And, that fatherly connection, I mean, it's so wonderful and beautiful that you can tell your father that. My dad has long been gone, but dancing and singing with my father when I was a little girl was what started the musical journey for me. And I think he was a corporate lawyer when he hated his job, and I kept asking him, well, why don't you do something else? Be a country singer, but it's just interesting how, that connection that we had, it stayed with me and it helped me. I mean, he came to me through dreams and through music, through the lyrics of music from beyond the grave. And he was the one that actually inspired me to go in the studio and record my Odyssey song, which is where the book came from, because the journey was first the song. And then from the song, it broke out into the chapters. But there was such synchronicity of him coming and bringing me, I remember bringing this ratty old paper bag to me in my dream. And my dad, by the time he died, he was an alcoholic and his life was a real struggle. But he came to me, I'll never forget, and he gave me this ratty old paper bag, and inside the bag was the quote by Shakespeare, "To thine own self be true." And then, a week later, not even a week later, I went into the studio. My knees were knocking. And I remember asking the man, because he told me about recording his original music. And I said, well, why did you actually start recording your own music? And he said, It's like that Shakespeare quote, to thine own self be true. And that moment, my dad was coming through me and he was like, Emily, do this. Like he came through. And I think we have an ancestral legacy. And when we, and that's why actually some things feel so challenging for us. I put that in quotes because we're actually not just breaking through those emotional codes for ourselves, but we're actually freeing the ancestral legacy that goes on, and we may not know the particulars of it, but that's why things that seem impossible and only in our imagination, we need to go forth. And it's like that "Don't Stop Believing" song, right?
Yeah.
You believe, and then you walk that path every single day. You want to play the piano, you practice you want to sing, you practice it every day. You imagine. I remember when I first started singing, I was in my parents' garage. And I had a vacuum cleaner, and I had this doll that I taped to the back of the vacuum cleaner, and I sang my heart out into the vacuum cleaner.
I love it.
And my parents were like, "Oh my God, what is she doing?" But I was like, "What do you mean? What am I doing?" This was before I got a job in a music store. This was before I started, playing my own music. I mean, it was just a dream. But why are we not here? We're here to live those dreams, not just for ourselves, but for the village.
I believe
right?
Emily has lost her mind. We have to institutionalize her. She needs help. There are two biblical passages that come to mind when you talk about this, and when I think about my father. One of them is the old. I think both of these are in the Old Testament. That says the sins of the father are passed on to the sins of the son to 7 generations. Well, why can't the converse be true? The blessings of the Father being passed on to the sons to 7 and 7 and 7 and 7 generations. And then the other one. And this one I've always thought of as a two-edged sword. You can look at the child in this example, and then you look at the adult they've become. And here's the passage. Train a child up in the way that he or she should go, and when they get old, they will not depart from it. Take a look at that child. How do you want that child to be when they get older, when they become an adult? Now take a look at the adult and remember that passage. How was that child trained? How was that child raised? It's sort of the double-edged sword.
That is so key. And when I first started writing the Odyssey book, I had to rediscover and reunite with my inner child. And that was the energy that was coming at that time. And that's why it was so kind of haphazard how everything was happening, because I had opened that channel, the music was coming. I didn't know what to do with it because I didn't know how to hold it.
Yeah.
But when you are the adult and you recognize, I remember I'm in this online piano jazz course, and I was playing Silent Night. I did a version of Silent Night, and one of the responses was I had talked about being a little girl and having the candles at the end and everybody holding their candles and singing Silent Night. And she said, "Oh, I can just imagine that little girl and you doing that." She said, "The girl is gone, but I can still imagine." And I said, no, she's never gone. That part of you, I say this to the seniors on their deathbed, I say that part of us is never gone. That is the radiance of who we are. And here's another quote from the Bible. You need to become childlike to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Not childish.
Childlike. Childish does not work. Childish will not get you your dreams.
To get you the belt is what it'll get you sometimes.
It will get you the belt. It will, yes, and it will get you the belt from society too, because that and many artists end up being childish. The ones, and I think that's the thing with John Denver is that, there was childish behavior going on, but he had enough support and enough inner power that it was, and many artists are that way.
Yeah.
They just, it's that inner child run amok. But if you get in touch with the inner child and you listen, that's the thing, is to create the dialogue. And that's where those songs, when I'm a good man doing the best that I can, is, a song about your essential goodness, and that essential goodness comes from the child,
Yeah.
right? I was born that way.
Yeah. The thing that I really admire about him in his interviews and, of course, his book is he owned his childish behavior. He owned it. He didn't shy away from it.
Yeah.
He wasn't necessarily proud of it, but
Yes.
that's what made him who he was.
Yes. Yes.
And when we find that song, our song, in that Odyssey of song, it can be very, very profound. I will share with you also an aspect of going through. When my wife and I moved to Santa Barbara almost 17 years ago, May 9th of 2006, and I remember this very well. We had doctors, all right? We had physicians. We would go to, I had a lens implant. I had this, that, and the other thing, dentists and on and on.
Yes.
Neither of us were taking any medications. Zero medications, all right? Now, I understand, yes, 2006, I was only 46 years old. All right. I'm 62 now. All right. So we've got a few years under our belts, almost 17 years. I'm now taking high blood pressure meds, and she's taking all kinds of other meds that she wasn't taking when we moved here, and she started working for the company that, yes, folks, she was actually discharged from after 16 and a half years. Totally unceremoniously, and so forth. And I could say other things about that experience. However, and she was released, I'll put it that way, on the 15th of December of this year, 2022, as we head into 2023. And it's only been 14 days, 15 days, 16 days. She has become aware of a increased clarity of mind, of soul and emotions. It's not to say that she's completely healed. She still has those moments of anxiety and depression. But at the same time, we talked earlier about using the right, speaking certain words. She had wanted out of there. But she wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of quitting. I had a job like that. It was a horrendous work environment, radio station. But I wasn't going to quit. I enjoyed what I was doing too much. They were going to have to throw me out. And they did. They didn't fire me. They laid me off, as they said. Anyway, her health is now starting to slowly improve. She's starting to feel better about herself.
Yes.
And it's interesting because it goes to a conversation we had in the truck. We were driving out to the valley, and she says, if there was one thing that you could change about me, what would it be? And of course, my hackles went up going, I ain't that stupid to answer that kind of question. Come on, you've got to be kidding me, Now, that was what I said in my head. And she saw the hesitation. She said, okay, I'll go first. And so she answered, she says, if there was one thing I could change about you, I think it was that my vision would be good in both eyes. Well, a beautiful thing. So I said, okay, I know where you're coming from now.
Yes.
And I told her, I said, if there was one thing I could change about you, it would be to increase your confidence in yourself.
Oh, I love that, Richard.
She is beginning
Love that.
that rise.
I love that.
You
I
know?
love that. Yeah, and you know what? Actually, that's what I've been writing about for the second book. Now, I'm not saying anything. I've been a little stuck along the way, but that's what it's about, is that clarity and that confidence. And when we are aligned with who we truly are, and we don't have to hide ourselves. This is something, the alcoholic path, I know this from my father and growing up in that family dynamic. And you're right, the Odyssey does have connections in that way is it's a recovery program.
Mm-hmm.
When you recover your voice, when you recover your true essence, you don't need to hide from yourself, from the people that you love, and from the world. And that's a lot of times we end up doing this dance. It's a dance of intimacy, but it's also a dance of fear, and it's a dance of shame.
Yeah.
And when we are willing to sit with all of that we are, all of the, because this odyssey, which essentially is a mirroring of life itself, the spiritual journey that we're on, is that we will be greeted by opportunities. Those opportunities will bring about emotion in us. And then we decide if we are going to sit with that emotion, if we're going to transform it, we're going to run and hide, we're going to do. And there are certain situations and environments that feed the toxicity of relationships that mirror that. And when we finally step away from that, whether it's an intimate relationship that's dysfunctional or work situation, it doesn't matter. It's all relationship. Then we create space where our radiance can shine through and our cells actually change. We start to get those messages that, hey, guess what? I can be healthy. I can be healthy. I can live healthy. I don't have to play out certain toxic roles and mirror that out in the world. And when we shift that, situations in our life will just fall away. And sometimes, even though it's hard, we have to bless those people that walk away from us. We bless those places that fire us. We bless all of that because they are no longer aligned with the love of who we are, the joy of who we are, the confidence of who we are. And we're unstoppable when we keep moving on that odyssey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Emily Yurchesen is my guest. EmilySongbird.com is the website.
And podcast.
And podcast. That's right. That's right.
Yes.
And An Odyssey of Song is also available through your website as well. We certainly hope that folks will get a copy because it's well worth the small investment in that regard. But then when you start reading early in the book, you start to realize that it's time to make a similar investment in self. And it has changed me, I know, to where I made the choice a year after I wrote that song to become a part of that program with the Santa Barbara Revels for the holidays. And I did some things that I didn't think I would do. They're very good things that I did. I did not think that, I'd never participated in anything like that. Did I participate in the kids' Christmas pageant or whatever it was when I was in school, in grade school? Probably, but it's not the same thing.
No.
This is much more conscious. You're much more aware of what's going on. But we just, the village just had an incredible time.
Yeah.
And it did feel like we were living in a different world as we were there on stage, in spite of the fact that, we can see
Yes.
the audience, we can hear them laughing and carrying on and whatever it is as we're doing our thing.
Yes.
And it's funny, too, because someone said, there isn't really a story here. There really isn't a story. It's just a bunch of things put together. And I'm going, what the heck are you a part of? Because there's a story here. And it's what I said earlier.
Yes.
About death and life.
Yes. Yes.
Death and life. And it's okay as the play, as the performance unfolded. It's just fine to be proud of your Scottish heritage. We do these things, we sing and we dance and we at Yule and solstice because that's who we are.
Yes.
And so forth.
Yes.
And it's okay to be proud of those things, but at the same time, you need to be proud of who you are.
Yes.
And I'm proud of who I am.
Yes.
And I love the fact that my parents both have verbalized that, not just for me,
Yes.
I was told I was told when I was 13, 14, 15 years old by my mother, says, just want you to know that I knew how special you were going to be when you came out, and so forth, right?
Love that.
Well, here's the kicker. Turns out she told us all that same thing.
But here's the
But
kicker.
it's still true.
But here's the kicker
Yeah.
is to know that, to
Yeah.
know how special we all are. And you talk about the village. Well, I teach a number of families in well, you were to one of my recitals. You actually perform your song at one of them. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a performance on the stage or you're with this network of families. We're all part of the global family.
The human family.
It's the human family. And I thought about making an album about this. Maybe I still will, called The One Song of Love. And I know you have that song about the one voice. So one voice, one song, whatever it is, that we are not only a part of it, but we are an important, special part of the whole inner working, the tapestry of life. And we are disposable. We are disposable, but we're also special,
Yeah. After that performance that you invited me to participate in, I think it was this past summer.
Yes.
Several of the men came up and thanked me for the song, which told me that was something that they needed to get in touch with too. That in spite of everything, as a matter of fact, this gal that recommended these two books that I have in Audible, and I asked her, she mentioned this. She says, "You don't need to do anymore. You've already done. Okay, you need to take time. You need to ground yourself, walk around in nature, etc., etc." Because that's what we try to do in order to, so to speak, almost justifying our existence, because we got to do and do and do and do and do and do and do, because we're the man of the house, the man of the family, and so on and so on and so forth. When what we really need to do is just be.
Absolutely, the human being. Absolutely. Yeah. And and what you were doing for those men, which is what I do now too, is you were modeling. You were modeling that for them. And I see when I go into these families, oftentimes I'll start with one child, but then the next sibling will start, and then the mom will be playing, and then the dad. Like recently, I have a couple of dads that have started with the guitar. And so it's like it, and yes, I think, and I'm actually getting in touch with that masculine part. I call it the masculine part of myself. And because 6 months ago I decided to marry myself, and I thought it was kind of a funny thing. Actually, I'm wearing the engagement ring right now. This was I got in Mexico, and it seemed like a crazy thing. But when I put a little video on YouTube, it was amazing how many views I got. But it was an important thing for me to do, because there is a part of us that wants to take care and be the householder and all that kind of stuff. And there is the nurture. And actually, that's why I talk about that in the Odyssey of Song too, is that we have that masculine and that feminine, and they're both really important to recognize and to honor. And so I've been really seeing the changes in my own life, financially getting stronger, that in music, you need that. You need to be able to have that masculine to hold the feminine part of you, to express the vulnerability of that. So it's a fascinating journey with that.
It's extraordinary, the things that we go through in our lives, the challenges, as well as those. And again, I've used this analogy on a number of occasions, and it seems to work pretty well. And that is of a river. And I joke about this part where I say, what you want to do is you want to lay back and float on your back. Now, I can't do that, so I can lay front and face down. So I know how to drown real well. But let's just say you're on a flotation device.
Yes.
And you just allow yourself to float and be carried by the current. Now, the current might take you real close to the shore on the left and then back out, and then real close to the shore on the right and then back out again. And you may go through some rapids.
Yes.
And there might even be in those rapids, of course, what's making the rapids is, of course, the running water over rocks.
Yes.
So you've got those rocks under the water you
Yes.
kind of be careful about.
Yes. Navigate.
But this is what life is.
It is.
And
is.
you're going down this river headed towards the wide open sea.
Yes.
The wide open
Yes,
sea.
absolutely. Oh, I love that. I love that for
Yeah.
so many reasons. I write so many songs about rivers. I remember, but last summer I went on a river trip, on a rafting trip, on a paddle board down the Rio Grande River, and
Wow.
it was very exciting. But the funniest thing was when we first got in, my partner at the time he was navigating, and I was I was paddling. And the first thing that happened is we rammed right into a rock. I said we were just heading right for it. And boom, I fly off the paddleboard into the river. And there I am in the river. But the funniest thing is the panic set in. But then I realized I'm in 4 feet of water. Like I could literally
could stand
up in
yes.
the water. And so that's the thing is that, the river, and sometimes we can't, and sometimes the rapids, but, and the other thing about that is so funny. I remember having a series of dreams, and the first dream, I was by a river and I was clinging to this rock for dear life. I was holding on, and I knew when I woke up, I'm like, Emily, you gotta let go of the rock. You gotta get yourself in the river. And then I remember another dream where there were all of these figures, and they were dressing up in these colored costumes, and they looked like mini condoms. They were just like dressed up in these. Yeah, they were so funny, but they were sliding into the river, and they were just gliding. And I thought, and at that point, I was able to get in the river. And I think you're right. There is a flow. There is a momentum. There is an energy that moves through all of life, and we are all, and that's also part of the Hopi prayer. Do you know about the Hopi prayer? It's a beautiful prayer, but it's a prophecy. Speaking of the new year, it's a prophecy, and it talks about how, we are all in this river, and the best thing we can do is look around to see who's in the river with us, and to smile and to recognize the joy. We're all in it together.
Yeah.
We're all in it together.
Yeah.
So we might as well enjoy the ride.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And that's different. It's a difference to what we've been hearing for the last almost 3 years. About
Yes.
how we're all in it together alone kind of thing. It's like, no.
Yes.
We're all in this life together, the
Yes.
river of life.
The river of life.
And it's something that we've got to go through. We've got to come to grips with it. We've got to go through it.
Yes.
And when we can float and just allow the current to carry us,
Yes.
it doesn't mean we don't do anything. No. You do what you're led to do.
Yes.
That's where the intuition comes in. That's where that still small voice comes in.
Absolutely. And that's where the creativity comes in.
Yeah.
Because then you go, okay, I want to buy a house, or I want to do this. I want to be part of this production, but I don't know how to go about this. And then your imagination lights up. And that's when the adventure starts. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but Spirit does.
Yeah.
The universe knows, and we're going to co-create this together. That's where we're going to explore and experiment. And I love your idea of there's not failure. It's just exploration.
It's exploration and learning.
That's
The
it.
other element that I shared with the director, number one, that we're a village up on stage. We're a
Yes,
community.
I love that.
But then I said, because I used to do this when I was a kid growing up, and I miss doing it. I wish that I could set aside the time with everything else I have going on. But
Yes.
I said, you're also a model builder.
Ooh, I like that.
You have all of these parts.
Yes.
Okay. And I do not envy him his job of constructing this model that takes 2.5 hours to
Oh
lay out.
man, that's a lot of work.
Between the cast, the
Yes.
music, the
Yes.
acting,
Yes.
the dancing,
Yes.
the lighting, the
Yes.
sound, the props,
Yes.
and whatever else is there.
Yes.
Okay. I said, every show, every rehearsal, you build it and you say, oh, shoot. Like when I was building mine, I'd get glue on my fingers and I would touch the plastic, and now I got my thumbprints all over the fuselage of the plane, or
Yes,
the hull of the
yes.
boat, or whatever.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
And so the next model that comes along, open up the box, and I begin the process all over again.
Yes.
And we'll see how that turns out.
Yes.
And each successive attempt gets, got that right,
Love it.
and so on and so forth, until the very last attempt. And I really do believe that our Sunday performance was the best.
Yeah.
You are basically, that's what you're building,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
prefer using the analogy of the model because it's a much
Yes.
more tangible thing
Yes,
than
I love
building
it.
a building.
I love it. Yeah.
And of course, then I said, I want to be careful here because I don't want to overthink this.
Yes.
I don't want to overthink this.
That's the killer, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
But that was the way that I saw it. Those two different observations of mine,
Love it.
having never done this before.
I love it.
And even after you and I had completed my song, I kind of felt the same way, that as we began the process, there were these little steps along the way, and I liked the way that you handled this. It was kind of like a lot of the therapists that I have seen, a lot of the people I've had on my program too, where you never led me down a particular path. You would ask me, okay, so what comes next, and what comes next? And I remember when we were working on the verses. Okay, think about a time when, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously I went with the first thing that came, and that's then we went from there. And
Yes.
then one evening or one morning, I guess at 2 a.m., I was going through some challenges, and the next three verses just boom, just poured out.
Oh, yes. I remember that conversation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And what's so neat is, like I said, the book actually started as a song. There's a whole album of the music because there's songs that go with each of the chapters.
Right.
But the structure, like if I would have thought I was writing just a regular, like a certain book, I would have written a book. But I had this incredible kind of creature,
Yeah.
and it was like, well, is it a song? Is it a book? Is it what is it? And so, but when I stayed with it, what I recognized is that the song, because I'm not a therapist, I use therapeutic techniques. But if people want therapy, what I need to do is I gear them back to the song, because that's what it's about. Is I'm not the one who's going to give you the answers,
Exactly.
right? I'm teaching people to get in touch with their own creative process, and that's the therapist. Their own creativity, their own song is the healer. And that's my process. When I sit down with music and it pours forth through me, I'll ask a question, and the response comes through me, and that's what and that's why it usually ends up being this incredible ballad with a bridge or two bridges, or it's like this incredible kind of thing, because it's your life being reflected back musically and vibrationally. This is new. I haven't heard anything of this being done in this way.
It's it is definitely something that again, it was something that I had to step outside my comfort zone. It may sound a little strange, folks, but when it comes to singing solo, I'm on the shy side. But once I get started, it's kind of like that one phrase that I've heard about, whether you're rock climbing or you're sailing or you're doing something of this nature, where you have a starting point and then all of a sudden you're in it. It's like, well, you can't turn back now. You've already started. One of those kinds of things.
Like the river, right?
You're committed. You are now committed. I should be committed, but that's another subject for another show.
Yeah.
But once you've started, you might as well Go for it. You might as well.
Yes, because what you're doing, and this is what I discovered, I wanted to learn to play the guitar. That was my whole thing. I had no idea that the guitar was just a catalyst
Yeah.
for not only all this music inside of me, but a whole different path that I was to walk.
Yeah.
That, my whole life was going to change by this simple guitar. And so that's why I use these tools. The guitar is not just an instrument. You are the instrument. The guitar is a tool, like the lightsaber, right?
Yeah.
That is your lightsaber. And people will say, oh, I wish I could play the guitar. But I was like, and then I listen up and I go, wait a second, what is it you're really wishing for? And one of the things you talked about, the changes that you opened yourself up to this performance, it opened to expansion of your own creative life, right?
Yeah.
And but the other thing, and this is the main thing that shifts, is like we talked about, that confidence that you are willing to take risks that you wouldn't have necessarily before, because what happens is your vibration shifts and you recognize you no longer identify yourself as a victim in your life.
Yeah.
And that's the energy. That's the energy of the Odyssey song. That's the energy of the book. And that's the energy of my life as I model that for others, because I don't, it's a journey it is the hero's journey that you go on, and you are the hero or the heroine. And so you get to choose. It's a choose your own adventure, about which way you go. But there's a structure. And I do encourage, like on the river, okay, well, you might want to not go over to that place because that has a really big rock and a really big, or if you do, you might want to paddle around this way, right?
Yeah.
You might want to choose words in this song that actually identify where you want to go. And that's actually what the Odyssey song is about. In the bridge, you might have perspective about where you've been, but the chorus is, I'm a good man. I am doing the best that I can. This is who I am. My essential goodness is here,
As we continue, I want to talk about an element of all of this that we haven't really discussed yet, and that is if one is in a relationship with someone. And we're going to talk about that as we continue with Emily Yurchesen here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Emily Yurchesen's my guest. EmilySongbird.com is the website, as well as podcasts you can find there, including this,
Yes.
and also her book, Odyssey of Song. And we hope that you will get a copy as well. I want to address, as we are coming close to the end of our time together, the dynamic of doing all of this that we've talked about in the last hour, almost hour and a half. And that other person isn't there. Meaning they're not in that same space. They're not in that vibration. They're not in that flow.
Yes.
And they may be challenging you. What are you doing? And where are you going? And who are you seeing? And the suspicions, and you got to justify everything, and on and on and on and on.
Yes.
And that can cause people to stop, to paddle over to the shore and get out of the river.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, because what you're doing is you're creating an intimacy with yourself that is really necessary, in fact, to deepen the intimacy with another. And so I think, it's really important to be honest that you're in a process, and that you are. That you're committed to this process, and that it's really important. And I think the main thing is it's for the good of the relationship. It's for enhancing and supporting not only your own creativity and the recovery of that, but also the relationship. Because the work that we do individually has no doubt an effect on everybody around us. And we do become, I have a song that I wrote called I Am a Lighthouse, and that, we vibrationally shift, and that affects everybody else around. I don't think it's helpful to necessarily share the particulars, at the time,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a very intimate and there's confidence in this
Yeah.
process, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I think it is important to share at some level that you've decided to go into this process,
Yeah.
and that you hope to have the support of the other in that way. But if not, it's okay too,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I can share in reference to my story and my song that it was, I guess the best way to put it, it was actually inspired by my wife.
Yes, yes,
It was actually inspired by her and those very words, at least the first half.
yes, yes,
And it's something that I know it's a challenge. It absolutely is. But I also know that when you begin the process, and again, as you say, you are honest without sharing a lot of the particulars because of the
yes,
confidentiality
yes,
aspect as well. They're going to see a change in you.
yes,
They're going to see a
yes,
change,
yes,
whether they verbalize it or not.
yes,
And then that is going to cause them to change.
yes,
Whether they like it or not, they're going to
yes,
change.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
And it might result in a change in the relationship.
yes,
The relationship could go away.
yes,
Or, as you were saying,
yes,
it could become much closer. It
yes,
might actually bring you closer
yeah,
together.
yeah,
But there is certainly a necessity for that a level of honesty.
absolutely,
Very
absolutely,
important.
absolutely. Yeah, and the relationships, this work is so powerful, and that's why it's not you have to have a readiness for it. And I won't take necessarily just anybody on this journey. If you buy the book, you do get a free coaching session to assess if it's a good fit for you.
Right.
But it is incredibly deep work that you're doing. And it's funny, I think about what you were saying about that and my recent breakup. It's been almost 6 months now, so I'm on the other side of it. But my recent breakup, I remember my partner thanking me. He said it was the best relationship he's ever been in. And he thanked me for driving him away, which was kind of an ironic thing. And I think, wow, that doesn't sound so good. But he did not know. He did not have that connection with who he truly was. And so he needed to go and find that. And he could not do that in relationship with me.
And what I find interesting is it sounds like it was a very amicable
Yes.
dissolution, if you will,
Yes.
of the relationship.
Yes, it really was. There's emotion that comes up and that kind of thing, but I recognize all along that I saw myself in him, but it was me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, where I didn't speak my truth. I didn't express my creativity, and he was looking to me. He was seeing me in that way. And I learned things from him, really good things. But yes, and I think you have to be prepared. And that's why, and like I said, I'm not a therapist. I do connect Jungian psychology with music,
right.
which is something that is exciting. And I know you've had the psychotherapist who did the interview for me
Yes.
about from the Psychological Perspectives magazine on. So I do use aspects of Jungian psychology that I organically integrate, but that process is really powerful. You are doing the individuation process, you are integrating fragments of yourself, and you are no longer a victim to your life or your relationships. And so as you become more empowered, the other people around you, they either will get more empowered, which is what happened in my partnership, right? Hey, I don't need you anymore. You taught me what I needed, and or they're going to fall away. And that's what happens.
That's why I love some of these. I don't know if they call them old wives' tales. Well, I don't know why they call them that, but needless to say, about how, number one, how sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah.
Not true.
Not true.
Not true. Because of the emotional traps that we've already set up for ourselves from going back to maybe the very beginning. Then there's the other one. You can't change other people. The only proviso to that, or addendum to that, I would say, is you can't change other people consciously.
Right.
You can change other
Yes.
people when you change yourself.
That, you know what? And I think that is such a crux for when we talk about going into this next year, because whether it's you're a parent trying to, you want to change a child, or you want to, it doesn't, you can talk yourself blue in the face, and we can do that to ourselves too. It's through the action, conscious action, not running around crazy, but aligning yourself. And this is actually what I'm writing in this next book, is the daily practice of what are the rituals that we can do on a daily basis, and how to get in touch so that we are making choices aligned from who we truly are. And we're creating practices so that it's shifting our vibrations. I mean, this conversation we've had has been so delightful. And I know you and I have both shifted from where we were before. And so we're meeting each other at a place where I'm like, oh my gosh, we could go on for so long, because we have really empowered ourselves from where we had started, both of us.
Well, when it comes to therapists and therapy, I've said this probably as long as I've been interviewing, that these programs, these interviews, these conversations are therapy for me.
Yes.
And I'm lucky in that respect, that I don't want to say it's free, because it takes time and energy, and then I have to go produce the video and all that kind of stuff, but I love doing it.
Yes.
And I have been challenged on numerous occasions with some of the things that I have offered up in conversation with many of my guests.
Yes.
And that is absolutely okay.
Yes.
One of my guests, and I use this example as we're coming close to our end, where I shared a perspective on what we were talking about. And he says, well, that I like that, but what about this? And he shared it, and I'm listening intently because I'm curious as to where he's going. And he finishes, and I'm going, well, there goes another one of those straw huts up in flames. And I carried that a little further, and I said, you know what? I don't care. As a matter of fact, we could set them all aflame, because first of all, I don't have all the answers, and I'm just trying to figure it out too.
Yep.
And if I actually am really listening to what someone is saying and can consider the possibility that they're offering up, rather than saying, oh, no, because you're on the wrong side of the aisle, or no, you're of this persuasion or that persuasion or this religion or whatever.
Yes.
And it's like, no, because if I do that, and this goes to another one of my analogies, I am denying myself the opportunity to receive messages from this person, as well as preventing this other person from receiving the messages that the universe may have for them from me.
Absolutely.
And then I cannot continue to build my puzzle of the big picture.
Absolutely.
My puzzle, and then this person cannot continue to build theirs.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, I was thinking, going back to the Disneyland thing, you were talking about the aggression at Disneyland, is that what you can do also is to model how to have the conversation, because I think that is the key, is how we have the conversations, how we have them with ourselves, how they have them with others that have different points of view. That, can I really be present, or am I going to shut myself off because I know this is not my belief? And am I going to get aggressive? Am I going to or can I sit with this? And can I sit with this for a while? And can I really open up to, what is it that, because there's always a kernel of truth, because we're all teachers and we're all learners. And so, but I mean, I think that idea of Disneyland as this utopia, right? We envision the utopia of our world. And I don't know, I still really believe, because much of my life, because I do engage in authentic, compassionate communication, I learn so much from different points of view and perspective. And I'm willing to share in ways that perhaps I haven't before, because I am more confident about who I am and what I believe. And, at first I was timid about my book. I didn't market it very well. I didn't, and so, but I've seen it come back over and over again. The power of our work comes through us, whether or not we even wanted to at times. We're here. You talk about purpose, going back to that if we get out of our own way, our purpose will shine through us.
Yeah, it will.
Because our purpose is being, the being of who we are and who we are meant to be. And for me, that goes back to the love.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Emily Yurchesen is my guest. An Odyssey of Song is her latest book, and her website is emilysongbird.com, where you can also check out her podcast. We certainly hope that you will do that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Emily Yurchesen has been my guest here on the program. And Emily, first of all, I want to thank you for giving us quite literally an hour and a half of conversation that I hope that people will listen to on the various platforms that we have them available. And I look forward to seeing you in 2023 as we move into this new year of new opportunities and, yes, new challenges. But that is what makes life worth living. Quite honestly, it really is.
Yes. Absolutely. Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. It was such a delight. I just found the joy of the conversations, the real authentic conversations. And I've so appreciated that, getting to know you over these last couple of years. And I'm deeply grateful to be here.
As am I. Before I let you go, I have those 3 final questions, but they're not the same ones that I asked you last time.
Adventure!
But before I do that, I need to let you know that you are listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays, and in this case, New Year's Day at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday morning at 1 a.m., and Wednesday at 9 a.m. for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story. Podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, Amazon Music, and many other locations, including richarddugan.com. We have the playlists for 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, and this being 2023 there as well. But we're also on YouTube. And we hope that you will subscribe to both the podcast and video cast, or at the very least, click the notification so that you can be notified when a new program, a new conversation is uploaded. We also ask you to spend time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, where we ask you to go within and listen to that and follow the promptings of that still small voice. And then if you can support us financially, we would be gratefully appreciative. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when you go there, they'll ask you for an email address to whom to send the contribution to. Just put my email address, richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. With all of that being said, Emily, the 15th year, we've dropped one question for a new one, but the first of those 3 is, who is Emily Yurchesen?
Emily Yurchesen is a role that I'm playing in this lifetime, and there are many different roles that she plays. She's a teacher, she's a songwriter, she is a lighthouse. I think this would probably be the most thing that I identify. She's a lighthouse of love. She is a lighthouse, a way shower that through her own experiences, through her own transformations, through her own learnings, and all her stumbles and all the challenges that she goes through, that she models a way for others to be able to navigate their life, knowing that they too are at their essence, at their core, love.
What is your life's purpose?
Oh, well, I think it ties in to who Emily Yurchesen is. I believe that my life's purpose is to be a lighthouse. I believe that I am here to model a way of being that is true, like that quote, to be true to myself. When I was little, it wasn't okay to be my true, unique, creative self. So I stuffed that. I pretended that I didn't love to write songs, and I pretended that, that I didn't express uniquely in the ways that I did, and it didn't serve me, and it hasn't served me. The more that I can truly be the unique spark of the divine that I am, the more that I give that freedom to others, and the more we can celebrate that village together.
Hmm. And our final question, this is the new one for the 15th year. It's kind of a fun one, I'd like to think. What was your best day?
Oh, my best day ever? Oh, I've had so many amazing days. I have to choose one. I think that's going to be a really hard thing to pick one day. Um, I, let's see. I really can't think of one day. I just can't. I think life is such a miracle, and every day brings such an opportunity for newness. I have had so many miracles in my life that I'm sorry, but I can't think of one favorite day. If it popped out, I would tell you. But I would say that I actually wrote a song recently called That Day.
Mhm.
And it was, if I could see the lyrics of it, maybe
Mhm.
I could even pull up the lyrics
Sure, go
of
right
it.
ahead.
Because that would be fun to actually
Mhm.
share a song that I recently wrote, the lyrics.
Absolutely.
And go ahead.
And while she's searching for that, writing a song, folks, not only does it bring out the story in you, but it also, at least for me, it gave me a greater appreciation for the music I was listening to, whether it was John Denver, whether it was the country music station that I listened to, or anybody else that I happened to listen to, um, because the words sometimes don't come easy. Sometimes you have to search for them. Sometimes it does come easy. As I mentioned before, the first verse was not a huge challenge, but still I had to think, okay, well, where am I going to go with this? And then of course there was another experience where boom, three verses just flowed out. They just came right out. As a matter of fact, I've heard this story so many times. I think it's my story, but it is not. Annie's song was written in 10 minutes on a ski lift. In 10 minutes.
Amazing.
Now he says, I wrote it and it was all up in my mind.
Yeah.
I had it
Yeah,
all there,
ready to go.
and as soon
Ready
as
to
I
go.
got back to the house, I
Yeah.
grabbed my guitar and I played it for her, and
Yep.
she loved it. So.
Yep.
So there you go. So
Okay.
take on the experience. Do you have?
I found it. I found it.
Excellent.
I couldn't find it at first because I actually called this song Coming Home, but it's also called That Day.
I like that.
And the words are, that day, beneath the passing clouds, I saw a glimmer on the water. That day, I dug my feet into the sand and heard the heartbeat of the land. That day, I heard the children singing as I fell down on my knees to pray. That day, I felt my heart begin to open and the poets start to play. That day, I fell in love with solid ground as words and music washed my worries away.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. It makes me think of myself being out on the beach.
Yeah.
And just walking and just kind of taking it all in, and
that's
whatever
it.
comes to mind.
Yeah. That's
know,
it.
it's
That's my
exciting.
favorite day. That day.
There you go. There it is right there, folks. Well, Emily, again, thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
you.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to lull. And Jeanette, I am still listening. I'm a good man doing the best I can. I'm a good man doing the best I can. Where I'm going is where I'm coming from. Where I'm going is where I'm coming from. Years ago I was talking to you on the phone. I said some things I never should have said. When I was done, I knew I'd done you wrong. But I'm a good man doing the best I can. Sometimes I look into the sky. I think about Harry, John, and Dan, and what they might say about what it means to be a good man. I'm a good man doing the best I can. I'm a good man doing the best I can. Where I'm going is where I'm coming from. Where I'm going is where I'm coming from. You used to say you're a good man. That made me feel very proud that Mom and Dad had raised me to be a good man, standing tall and strong. I can't say I've always chosen well to be the good man every day. But when I choose to be the good man, I feel like I can fly away. I'm a good man doing the best I can. I'm a good man doing the best I can. Where I'm going is where I'm coming from.